just this simple piece of paper here, a lot of information to digest. What they found is there's too much information to digest because there's a lot of hospitals, there's a lot of patients. But they did find one thing, and they did find that the same patient, the same information, we could get the same vitals and the same information, but also if we could reduce it to pictures. So here you have images, notes about the patient. Who are they? Were they there before? Was this a person in the emergency department before? And finally it shows up as an EKG.
Okay,
so,
let's go back to the previous picture.
Yes.
So what you did was you took all of that text in the first picture and you reduced it into a number of boxes that people could, if they wanted to look at a particular box, they could go straight to that box.
Correct.
And then you also added pictures so that people could get used to the idea that, okay, if I need to look at the EKG, I press this button.
Right.
Okay, let's go to the EKG.
So when we look at the EKG, which is what they're looking for a cardio patient, as they did this, they found that we have all these patients going around, and we found that we're getting the EKG, but wait, I saw this EKG last week. I saw this person last week. This is a real true problem that we have because I have this, as you said, frequent flyers. We have them, but these are the people in the most need. They're the veterans. Many of them are homeless. Most of them have PTSD. So they really need the care, and it's also expensive to provide them care, have them show up in the ambulance.
Okay, so let's take a look at this next picture, which is, I love it. The whole idea is that in the emergency room, you've got people talking EKGs, MRIs, all these acronyms. Meanwhile, the police are talking about all of their separate pieces. So how do we do it so that they can have a common language? And it looks like all of these people know how to read maps.
Well, and this is really where it came to life. Okay. So the visualizations that they had on their whiteboard and the dreams they have came to life with this simple. This is static, but it helped them to actually see, wait, the same patient showed up to multiple locations. Wait, this is the same patient we had last week. What can we do to help this patient so they don't come to the emergency room? How can we avoid them coming in again? But this also started building a larger view where they're able to bring in new stakeholders. So the Navy got directly engaged with theirs, with the leaves. They started talking to cruise ships that are coming into this. But other populations, community clinics, homeless clinics, and those all of a sudden started saying there's something for us all to be gained by joining into this process.
So let's talk about mapping. So Kevin, you've been doing lots and lots of mapping with IntelliSense. Tell us about how the common language of maps, how have you found the common language of maps help people to work together?
Well, I think that is a common universal way that everybody can communicate. Everybody understands a map, but they can view it from their own perspective. You could be looking at a map from your role or whatever, let's say as an emergency room physician, and looking at where's my patient, what's going on with them. But I could be somebody that's a first responder looking at, well, where's the fire, what are the routes that I can go through, and looking at the same data but drawing very different conclusions from it.
Okay, so you've got different people doing their own thing, but they're seeing how their particular activities connect together because they're working on the same person at the same place.
Absolutely, and it's a framework for collaboration, really, is what we found, is bringing in all this multimodal data from many, many different sources. You can do all kinds of different things with it, but what you need to do also, besides ingesting that information, is you need to make better decisions. And one thing that we need to do in order to do that is to collaborate with others and come up with a shared, unified vision of what's happening and coordinate our actions together.
Okay, so all of these different people are using these different instruments. Absolutely. IntelliSense, you sense different things, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, and so tell us about what we're looking at here.
Okay, so I brought a few different little medical devices that were pretty handy. So we have blood pressure cuffs and pulse oximeters and things like that. And in the back of an ambulance, there's all kinds of different medical devices. Also on a life flight, when we're transporting somebody by helicopter, same sort of situation. Lots of different medical devices plugged into the patient. Going back to what Dan was saying, it would be really useful for the physician to know what is the condition of the patient that's coming into their emergency room soon.
Yes.
How do I know what resources I have ready to handle them? So what would be really handy is being able to have all of these devices then be able to transmit their data, maybe through something, let's call it a medical data router, that could talk to all of these devices, let's say in the back of the ambulance or back of the aircraft, and then transmit that data down to the ground so that the physician knows who's about to show up in their emergency room.
Okay, so I don't think our audience might understand what a router is. So let's you've got lots of devices. Different people are reading different things. And what you're saying is collect all of that information, put it together in a single place, and then send it out again to the people who need to know that specific information.
Yeah, maybe one good way to look at it is right now the condition of the patient is known in detail by the caregiver that's in the back of the ambulance with them, but not by the physician that's going to see them in 2 minutes when that ambulance arrives.
Yep.
So instead, wouldn't it be great if we had some sort of device, let's say an electronic instrument, that would talk to all of these and then be able to transmit that data somewhere else?
Okay, so I have a device here, and it says IntelliSense on it.
So one of the things that we came up with at IntelliSense and that we spun out of our lab at Stanford is we saw all kinds of sensors out there in the world, and we had this idea, what if we made one box that let you plug any kind of sensor into it and transmit that data from anywhere in the world? Makes sense. Well, it turns out these medical devices are just sensors too. They're sensors for the human body. So we could take this device, put it in the back of an ambulance or aircraft, and it could pick up the wireless or wired data from all of these medical devices and then transmit it to the ground where you could have a doctor watching that data live.
Okay, I'm starting to have an aha moment here. Kevin, you came from NASA. So at NASA, you've had to work out how to transmit information over long distances, collect things from all kinds of different devices, and you've come up with things from that background, and now you're taking that and applying it in the field of health, where people have said, oh, my way or the highway on this data, my way or the highway, and they don't want to talk. But what you're saying is that you can take your Martian experience and bring all of these different devices together, and you can use tools that you came to know about through experience and pull them together in a box like this, which somehow jumps the hurdle, which today everybody's talking about electronic health records, and they're saying, well, the VA can't talk to the community health centers because they've got different health records. Are you saying this thing could help?
Absolutely. So it can take data from all those different devices that exist there now. But one of the things that going back to what you mentioned about NASA and also working with the DoD sometimes, is their needs are really unique for their fields and their areas. But actually, then they're more than happy to have all that technology transition. So a good example, in the back of an ambulance, we may have all kinds of different vital signs devices, but working with NASA, we developed a device that lets us take a bunch of those together and build it together into one. And I actually brought one with me. This is a device called LifeGuard that we built with NASA a number of years ago out of my lab at Stanford that basically replaces one of those big vital signs monitors that you see in pretty much in any back of an ambulance and makes it much smaller. It makes it able to transmit its data. So we can shrink those things down because NASA needs things to be very lightweight and very small to go into space, but then we can turn around and use this on the ground too.
Yeah.
Now, one other thing that we haven't talked about, though, that's really important is it's one thing to take all this data and transmit it, but we can't have a bunch of doctors watching a bunch of screens of raw data. That just isn't a good way for them to spend their time. They need to be spending their time touching patients. So we've been working lately with the Air Force to take that raw data and build a new version of the LifeGuard device that then also can do real-time analytics on that data. What does that mean?
What does real-time analytics mean, Kevin? And what does it mean to a homeless vet who has been picked up by an ambulance?